Hi, I'm Ari, I'm the Oak Witch, and in today's video we're going to be talking about botany. Oh, I am so excited for this video because I love botany. I love plants so much, and I have dedicated my career essentially to botany. And I want to talk to you guys about it in this video, teach you some botany. How many times I'm going to say botany in this video? Too many times. Understanding botanical plant identification, how plants work, different types of plants that can exist in, an area, in a type of habitat, etc., has elevated my land-based work, my spirit work, animistic land-based practice so much, and I just want this for everyone. So I really hope people can get something out of this video, and let's just dive in before I ramble too much. Okay, so to botanize, you kind of need three things. So the first is a charged phone. We live in the digital world, and taking pictures of plants you found, if you aren't able to identify them then and there, is really helpful, especially if you want to go back later and pick it up. Charged phone that can take photos, very good. You need a key, so not a key that goes in a lock, but a key that exists in book form. And I will talk about that sort of stuff in this video. Mostly we'll be discussing keys, but find yourself a really good botanical key specific to your region, and I have some recommendations for people in Britain and Ireland. Sorry rest of the world, I don't know botanical keys for every country, but I am sure there are resources online to help you guys find some good ones. Yeah, a key, essential. With a key you need a hand lens. Hand lens is something which usually comes with a lanyard, but if not, this is the hand lens. This is a 10mm one. It's essentially like a little magnifying glass that you put right up to your eye, and say my finger is the plant. You put the lens right up to your eye, and then you focus the plant towards the lens itself. That is the best way to use a lens. So they tend to be quite cheap. They don't tend to be that expensive. Don't even remember how much this was, but it wasn't like anything more than £10. So get yourself a hand lens, it's important. My first kind of tip is, get a really good plant key. Now, ones for the UK, which I think are general staples, for wildflowers, so Forbes, Francis Rose's The Wildflower Key. This is an old book which I think has been revised and updated in recent years, and it is very good. I say recent years, it's probably 20 years old now of this edition, but it is essentially the book to use. It is very good, got most things in it. The only thing that I guess it probably doesn't go into as well are random hybrids and really rare species, which if you're a beginner at that level, you don't really need to know that. So you don't need to focus on that at least. So for wildflowers, and differentiating wildflowers from vegetative plants, in the sense that this goes through plants when they are in flower. That is what this book is good for. It's not good for identifying things that are not in flower. So obviously you get a daisy. The daisy head itself is the flower, and then the actual vegetative part of a daisy will be the basal leaves at the bottom. Identifying plants vegetatively is a great skill to have if you want to harvest or forage or gather all year. As an ecologist, it's very important to know because we do our survey work all throughout the year. So getting to know your plants when they're not in flower is a good vital skill to have for an ecologist. But anyway, the book to do that, which for British Flora, which is very key, pun intended, is The Vegetative Key by John Poland and Eric Clement. So people call this Poland key. We'll talk about keys and the language of keys in a minute. It's not so beginner friendly, but it is a very useful book. So this is good for plants vegetatively, so the green bits of plants. These I'm going to talk about together because they're kind of similar but just laid out differently. Are these two books. These are basically identifying trees in the winter, which again, as I said before, it's good to have this skill as an ecologist, because if you're doing surveys in the winter, you need to know what tree it is. You can't always rely on the leaves to be there because they won't be there. So you learn to identify them through other means, such as the like bud arrangement of you know, along the stem of the twigs, of the branches, bark of the trunk, etc, etc. And this one is very good for grasses. Now who really learns about grasses? Who really pays attention to grass? I'm grass obsessed now. I love grass. My favourite grass, for any of you grass nerds, is Yorkshire Fog, Holcus lanatus. Love it. It's fluffy, it's like furry, it's really smooth, and it's just fun. It's got little stripy pyjamas, and I'll show you a picture of that for what that means. I am boring everyone with this video, aren't I? I'm really sorry. But I'm gonna continue. This is good for grasses vegetatively. So grasses, I think, are a really underrated plant in, well, type of like group of plants in magic. Who really talks about grasses? There are things like sweet grasses, which obviously comes from a lot of Native American practices, but generally speaking, grasses aren't really talked about, which I think is a darn shame, because they're still a plant just as much as a wildflower is a plant, so justice for grasses in magic. And I'm gonna get really good at my grass magic, and then I'm gonna do loads of videos on it, because people need to talk about grasses more, in my opinion. But for identifying grasses, this is a really good one because it goes through the really fiddly bits which basically keys it out to the grass you're looking at. So I will actually go through what a key means now. So a key essentially is like a little puzzle. I'm sure there's better words to describe it, but it's like a little puzzle. For example, you have a plant. Usually in the field you have a fresh specimen. Keying out plants from dried specimens like this is not easy. I regularly do it for work. It's not easy. It's fun, but it's not easy. So fresh specimens are best. Taking them out to the field is what these books are designed for, because, you know, seeing it then and there, when they dry out, they lose their structure a bit, they lose their shape and sometimes the colour. Like this is mugwort and the leaves aren't brown. This is mugwort, they're green. So when you're getting to bits in the key which talks about the colour of the flower, colour of the plant, and you have a dried specimen that looks nothing like it, it's going to be virtually impossible to key out because it's not what it actually looks like. So the way a key works is that it will start off with like bullet point number 1. It will say plant is either this or it's that. If it's not this, then you go to that, and at the very end it will have where to go to next. So usually then be like number 2. You go to point number 2 and it'll be either the plant is this or is that. If it's this, then you go to where that takes you, or if it's that, then you go to where that takes you, and so on, so on. So it will sort of whittle it down until you get to a point in the key where it says it is this, or jumps you to a point in the book where you can then go to another key. It's fun reading, and by fun I mean it's fun if you like plants and you're a nerd, or you just like torturing yourself. It's a really helpful way to dissect the plant itself, to look at each individual bit of the plant to get a really accurate identification. Learning how to use a key from someone in the field is the best way to learn. Teaching yourself how to use a key, you know, the terminology, the language that they use in these keys is a bit hard. Having someone walking you through it is the best way to learn. And it's not necessarily the most accessible way to learn, learning from someone, but do seek out your local botanical groups. Here in the UK, there are some counties which have like a local botanical group with the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland, the BSBI. Check out their website. They will list local flora groups on there that you can contact and maybe meet up with people and get taught botany. There are other resources available online. There's the Field Studies Council, who published these books I spoke about, and Species Recovery Trust. They host a lot of courses, so botanical courses, either online or in person, that are really good. I've done some and they are really, really lovely. Some of them are better than others, obviously, but learning in the field, the ones have been so good with the Species Recovery Trust. I recommend them. If you're in the UK, you have some money to splash and you want to get serious about your botany, recommend that. Facebook, for all its pros and cons, there are actually some good ecology groups there. Facebook groups for like specific county flora or like the use of keys in general. There are lots of different groups that exist for botany and botanical learning, so have a hunt around, connect with people to learn. It doesn't have to be a solo endeavour if you want to get serious about it. There are lots of resources out there available, and I'll try point you guys in the right direction with some links below. Do check that out. But yeah, with these keys, the next tip is understanding plant terminology. That will be the thing which will help you understand how to use a key the most. So understanding the difference between a petal or a sepal or a calyx or a corolla, or, you know, people understand generally the leaf, but different leaf shapes. So is it ovate? Is it oval? Is it lanceolate? Etc. All these things which I can't teach in a singular video on a witchcraft channel. I won't really be able to go through because it would probably be very boring and these videos probably won't do very well. So it's a massive learning experience, but understanding that terminology, there are some really good glossaries out there. So this, I don't know if I'd actively recommend it because it's a bit expensive and hard to get, but do search out your second-hand bookstores, your charity shops in the UK, online second-hand places like Vinted, Abe Books. Check out those places, hunt around for it maybe, or some other botanical glossaries, because the way this is laid out, it has a general sort of glossary here, but it also then goes into like, I don't know if you guys can really see that, but these are like, this is one page on leaf tips. So whether it looks like this, that's what it's called. If it looks like that, it's called that. If it looks like this, it's called that, etc. But these are really useful terms to understand when you're looking at a key, because the key will reference if the leaf has a rounded tip, so the tip of the leaf is rounded like that, then it's this. Or if the leaf tip is acute, then it kind of goes like that. You know, those types of words are like key botanical terms that will differentiate one plant from another for what you're looking at. So that's how a key works, and it is literally looking at every little bit of the plant to differentiate it to a specific species level. And a lot of the time I see a lot of plant folklore or plant magic books or education kind of looking at things in terms of like a genus level, so not a species specific, but looking at like the plant like as like a group of plants. For example, buttercup. Buttercup is a, I don't know if colloquial term is the word to use, but it's like a informal term for like a plant. But a buttercup is like, there's so many different types of buttercups. Like here in the UK, you can get creeping buttercups. Creeping buttercups will grow like along the ground, stoloniferously is what they're called, but they call it creeping, and that is Ranunculus repens. The flower head themselves isn't too dissimilar to other types of buttercups, and the leaves look very different to that of a meadow buttercup, which tend to grow quite tall in individual stands, and their leaves are more finely cut in their shape. They're more indicative of nicer meadow grasslands, whereas creeping buttercup tends to be more found in like amenity grasslands. There's distinct differences between those two types of buttercup, but buttercup in itself is just commonly referred to as a flower. That is the genus of a sort of group of different buttercups, if that makes any sense. So I think for me, getting really specific with my plants and really understanding the terminology and the differences, the different habits of certain plants and how much they can vary in a genus has really helped me understand the sort of working with the land with specific habitats. For example, like the plants in an amenity grassland will feel really, like the experience of them will feel really different to me than that of plants and flowers in a wildflower meadow. They have different habits because they have different growing conditions. Amenity grassland, so particularly your amenity referring to like grassland that is usually very short, it's mowed a lot, it's trampled on a lot, so you'll see a lot of grasses that can sort of withstand that quite well. So perennial ryegrass is a very amenity grassland grass. With daisy, any plants that have like basal rosettes for leaves tend to do quite well because they don't mind getting trampled on, versus the plants that you'll find in a wildflower meadow, like a neutral meadow, so a wildflower meadow with neutral pH soils, will tend to be more species rich. So I feel like the spirits of the plants there are really different to, they're a bit more hardy, I guess, is a really brief summary of it, compared to like a wildflower meadow, which tends to be more delicate, but not in like a negative, fragile way. So, you know, there's understanding the different types of plants and the specific species that are indicative of these specific habitats and how they function within that habitat and that landscape can really help connect you with the land a lot more. And understanding this is done through learning botany using methods such as these. And the only way to really get good at this is through practice. That's the only way, really. It's going out there. Start off with getting like a field guide, and this can be like really simple books. Like this is a bit of an older field guide, but it's just one that I had on my shelf down there. But this doesn't necessarily function as a key, but it will just have like pictures of the plants and summaries of what they are. For example, a dove's-foot cranesbill, a very common amenity grassland species, a short semi-prostate annual with long hairs on the stems. So hence why a hand lens is really important, because sometimes you'll only see things like the hairs on the stem or on the leaf with a hand lens because they're so small. And obviously when you get even smaller plants, really tiny flowers, like you get a lot in the brassicaceae cabbage family, those flowers on those types of plants tend to be really small, and the only way to really see them, for example, whether or not the petals are joined or the ovary, whether it's inferior or superior, is to see it through a hand lens. So sometimes to get an accurate identification of the plant is through using a hand lens to see those really specific features. Because, for example, take a look at this, like a lot of those flowers, a lot of the cranesbills tends to be relatively similar in flower shape, in leaf shape, and it can be very small differences which differentiates one from the other. Hence why things like knowing your umbellifers can be quite handy, because you get knowing the difference between hemlock versus cow parsley can be quite important, because we know hemlock can be a little bit more toxic and dangerous than cow parsley. But another really key example is the difference between giant hogweed and common hogweed. Giant hogweed here in the UK is an invasive non-native species. It's also a very dangerous plant. Touching any part of the plant can cause these really severe burns and blisters, can scar you, and yeah, it's nasty stuff. I don't recommend googling it. But knowing what the plant looks like, because it has a very similar related species, common hogweed, which generally speaking is a lot shorter. Giant hogweed is called giant for a reason. It can grow huge, but the differences would be in things like giant hogweed has purple blotches along the stem. So if you, as well as hemlock. So if you see those purple blotches and you can see an umbellifer, I wouldn't necessarily touch it. I'd be very cautious and stay away from it. and little things. So understanding these different terms and what it means when it says that a plant is minutely hairy, or if it has like pinnate leaves. Understanding these different things can really help you with understanding, oh actually that's that species, but it can be different from this species. So yeah, find yourself a simple field guide if you want to start off with. Just have a read through it and go find a bit of grassland, sit down with some flowers and just see if you can find them, and then move on to more like botanical keys for accurate identification. Just honestly, it's trial and error, practice and perfect. And this is why it's good to learn from like a mentor in the field, because someone who knows more can point to where you've gone wrong in the key, because I've done that before where I'm keying by myself and I've gone wrong, and then you lose where you are and suddenly I don't know what year it is and I'm like, okay, I just need to stop. It can be kind of frustrating, but do have a go. And yeah, if you're out in the field and you have like, maybe print off some diagrams or get some diagrams of like, you know, plants on your phone, grab a flower, grab your hand lens and just really take time to sit and examine each part of the flower. Start off really simple with like a buttercup is like a really simple plant to start off with. Take some time to go through each part of the plant and try label it according to the diagram, and yeah, start simple and then grow on from there. Some very quick book recommendations for you guys to finish off this video. This one is a new release and I love these series of books, WildGuides by Princeton Press. They are very, very good, and this one is exceptional for plant identification. It is so good because they're all photographs. Most field guides are drawings, which are lovely, but they tend to not be very useful for getting an accurate display of what they look like in the field. This one has photographs. Fully recommend it. It is so good. This one's the one to get. And it was only released like a couple months ago. For trees, usually this is one that is recommended a lot. It's quite good in the sense that it's like got a lot of trees in Britain and Europe that you'll find, so not just native ones, but a lot of non-natives that are commonly planted or found in urban areas, hybrids. It has quite a lot of trees. Do recommend this one. It's not necessarily a key, but it's not photographs, but it is very good. So yeah, that is it for this video. I just wanted this to be like a intro into botany, and I hope that it's okay. I hope that my rambles have been somewhat useful. Probably not, but yeah, I just think that I wanted to introduce the idea of botany in occult spaces, because I think it's something which is a massively valuable skill to learn and really helpful for advancing your plant magic. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you want more of this type of video, then let me know and I will do them, because I could talk about plants all day. So thank you guys for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.